I'm seeing a lot of people sharing videos of things like police kneeling with protesters. Now, it's good that that's happening, but if those are the only videos that you are sharing, you are not helping, because the vast majority of what the police are doing right now is horrific and brutal. And so the 2 or 3 instances that you have found of someone not being awful and trying to lift those up and say, this is what, look at these people. You're not balancing it. We have to be real about what is happening here and how bad it is. There are dozens of videos from the past 2 to 3 days that show just horrific disregard for people's lives. And if you are seeing these dozens of videos of brutal violence by the police, and what you are holding up are the couple instances where they are not brutally violent, it is not helpful, because it is not reflective of policing in America. Now, from the people that I've seen sharing these, it may be reflective of the experience of white people interacting with police in America. But to not be able to look outside of your own experience and to not see that how police treat other people is bad, but it's okay, but you don't need to change the police because they treat you just fine. That's not okay. You have to believe Black people. You have to see these dozens of videos from just the past few days. How can you think that because you have not been harassed, you have not been beaten, you have not been assaulted or killed by police, because that hasn't happened to you, but you see these videos, just years of these videos, where they are killing people, they are harassing people, they are punching people, they are kicking people, they are tear gassing people. But what you're focusing on is that you found someone who kneeled with them, who kneeled in a way that didn't cause someone's death. That's what you're promoting? That's not helpful. And I understand the impulse to want to share news that isn't horrible, because this whole year has been bad news, and suddenly you found a story that wasn't horrible and you want to share it, and I get that impulse. But we are in the middle of a national conversation about race and policing in this country. And if what you as a white person are sharing in this conversation is reflective only of your experience with police, then you're not really participating in the conversation about race and policing in America. Because it doesn't matter how they treat you if you are not the one who is dying. I am going to give more weight to the people who are dying because of the police. I'm going to listen to their experiences, because if we are talking about race and policing in America, it doesn't matter how they might treat me if they are killing someone else. Do you remember the general feminist understanding of the problem with the phrase, "not all men"? That was part of our discussion about how even if not all individual men are abusers, all women have had valid reason to fear men. So when you say not all cops, that's a problem. Because even if you know a cop who's never killed anyone, all people of color have valid reason to fear that all cops might kill them. So if you're a white feminist who can understand the problem with not all men, but you can't understand the problem with not all cops, you've just got some more work to do. So you've got a friend and they come to you and they tell you that they are in a violently abusive relationship. how do you respond? You have two choices. A, well, I mean, we all had dinner together last week and everything seemed fine. So, or B, oh my God, we need to address this right now. This is very serious. I'm with you. We need to address this. This is not acceptable. Obviously, you're going to choose B because you're not a monster. So I'm going to need you to go ahead and stop sharing photos and videos of police kneeling with or marching with protesters, because that is not relevant. It is not helpful. All it does is allow the abuse to continue. Stop doing it. Now, maybe you don't get it yet. And you're like, well, I understand why someone would break up with an abusive partner, but why would you break up with like a regular partner? Here's the thing. The institution of policing is inherently violent. The system is actually not broken. It's working exactly as it was intended to. It is all about power and control, and it uses abuse and violence to control and to sustain the power that it upholds. That's bad. That's not good for people. Break up with the police. So I love that the protests are continuing and that they are not at all just in big cities. They are in small and medium-sized towns everywhere. But what I don't like is that I'm seeing a lot of the posters or advertising for these marches and rallies and protests are very adamant that these are peaceful protests. Do not bring weapons. This is peaceful. And it's like it does two things. It says that they have accepted the mainstream narrative that it is protesters who are violent rather than police. But it also separates these protesters we're not like those people. We're not like those protesters. We're the good ones. And we cannot be playing into respectability politics here. That is a trap. Don't fall into it. Sometimes people will comment on what's going on or comment on why they're not commenting more on what's going on by saying that it's just there's so much hate and negativity. There's just so much negativity going on. It's very low vibe, and as that being a reason or excuse of why they feel that they are not engaging with what's happening. I think that's dumb. I think that's how can you... Okay, let's try and talk about this. Looking at what is happening and saying that you don't want to talk about it because it's negative is the problem. Now, clearly the problem is murder and racism, but looking at what's happening and saying that you're not engaging because it is negative is a problem, is indicative of the problem of murder and racism, because it is so surface level. Because if you're looking at people who are angry and dismissing them because they are angry, you're not caring about why they are angry. And if you're not caring about that, then you're not doing anything about it. So stepping away because something is negative is not helping anyone, including yourself. And I think that people who think of themselves and the work that they do as being so focused on light and positivity need to get over themselves, because there are very important things in the world that are frustrating and that are infuriating, and those are valid things. Those are things that need to be addressed, and being angry about them is the correct response. And people of color are not able to look away from racism and ignore police brutality and murder because it's negative. That's ridiculous. So you stepping away because it's low vibe to you, who are you? And I understand the need for rejuvenation and space and healing and care. That is valid. But removing yourself from the conversation, from the movement, because you see it as negative, makes you part of what is keeping this in place. And I would hope that you don't want to contribute to that. So don't. I'm going to try and explain the concept of odds against chance. Now, this is basically a scientific way of finding out how likely something is to happen. So now if you were to flip a coin 100 times, you are likely to get 50 heads, 50 tails, round about there. But let's say you flip a coin 100 times and you get 80 heads, 20 tails. Obviously, that is possible. How likely is it that if you do it a second time, you get that same split, 80 heads, 20 tails? Well, you have to find the odds against chance. So now if the odds against chance of 80-20 is 10-1, that means that you would have to flip a coin 100 times, 10 times in order to get 80-20 to happen again. And if the odds against chance are 100-1, that means that you would have to flip a coin 100 times, 100 times in order to get 80-20 to happen again. It explains how likely something is to happen. Now that is an interesting scientific thing to know, but why am I talking about it? I'm talking about it because I wonder to myself, what is the number for the odds against chance that 4 black men were found, let's say, in trees within 2 weeks of each other? What are the odds against chance that those were suicides? It's not very likely, so I'm guessing the number is pretty high.